sometimes because folks just aren't always comfortable with it quite yet. A character that definitely you would see some syntactical differences. I don't remember if we mentioned this yesterday or not. Would be Lee, because the way he talks, his sentence structure varies. So when he's doing pidgin English, it's going to look a lot different sentence structure-wise, as opposed to when he is talking about Tim Shell and Hebrew texts and things of that nature. Details, remember, are certainly going to be facts. One of the nice things about taking a look at chapters 8 and 9 with Kate Cathy, there are definitely examples of facts that you can use. It doesn't have to be statistical kinds of things. Samuel would be a good example of facts so far as why he would be an underdog. Like what are problems that Samuel has? They're not problems, but what are things that go against him from being successful? Okay, so yeah, poor immigrant. One of the reasons why he's so poor is because the land is terrible. He has a ton of inventions and patents, and none of them do anything. So mentioning those things as factual information, those would certainly count as details. How many of these things do you have to use? 3, all right? And keep in mind, figurative language is not one that you will use. The individual ones within it are ones that you will use. So if Abby decided that she wanted all 3 of hers to be figurative language, she could do that. She could have a paragraph that would be focusing on simile. She could have a paragraph that would be focusing on allusion. She'd have a paragraph that would be focusing on motifs. I would be perfectly okay with that. If you tried to squish all that stuff into one paragraph, it would turn into a mess. So figurative language you're not going to use as a device within itself, but you can certainly use those devices. So if there is a technique, and we could say rhetorical device, rhetorical strategy, rhetorical technique, it all means the same thing. If there's a technique up here that right now you're not comfortable with, don't worry about it. You probably won't have to use it yet. The other thing, and probably would be making some notes of this when you start doing your rough draft, if you use diction, make sure you describe it. What kind of diction is the writer using? Because again, if you go, Steinbeck uses diction, every writer uses diction, but what's the type of diction? How's that helping get his or her point across? All right? So we're okay with that.
Do we have to describe how they're an underdog as well as the 3 points?
I think it was 4th period where they were really asking a lot of questions, and it was the same thing, I think, with like that whole positively shaped and underdog idea that we were going over yesterday. Does each paragraph have to do both of those things? And my answer was your essay as a whole does. So I would think, especially if you're doing, was you asking if Kathy could be positively shaped? She came up again, I think, 7th period, and one of the reactions was, she's not an underdog. By someone who said, yeah, she could be. I mean, it's late 19th century, early 20th century. There's a lot of female stereotypes, gender stereotypes. The fact that she's female, that can make her an underdog. So I would say, especially if it's not a classical underdog, I would want to make it clear why you view the character to be an underdog. I'd say within that introduction, within that first body paragraph, kind of establish it. As you get into the positively shaping a character, that might be something that's happening more in the 2nd and 3rd body paragraph, so there could be a progression. For some characters, yeah, you could do both within each paragraph, underdog, positively shaped. I don't want to say you have to do it a certain way because depending upon the character, it's going to lend itself better, to one format, one structure, depending upon the character. But I'd say for the underdog part, intro, by the end of the first body paragraph, I at least understand where you're coming from. And this could go back to Iz's question, what if you disagree, with it? I might still disagree, but at least I know where your viewpoint is. And as long as I know that and you've supported it, you're doing okay. That answer it? What sentence do we need to nail in order for this thing to work? You need to have a thesis, okay? So here's how we go about doing thesis. What period do you have trig and pre-calc?
7.
7th, okay. Well, we're going to do some math right now. S plus P plus A equals thesis. You're welcome. going to work for this essay. It's going to work for the next essay. It's going to work for the essay after that. It's going to work for a while. Okay? SPA. There's two things you remember all year. It'll be diddles and SPA. What are you going to remember?
Doodles and spots.
Strategies, purpose, argument. Strategies, purpose, argument. Purpose is a verb. It is only one word. The word that you will not ever use is show. That word sucks. Yes, your AP English teacher just said sucks. Demonstrate's not any better because it basically is the same thing. All right, it's too generic. We'll come up with better stuff. Strategies, purpose, argument. We're doing make-believe a little bit right now, so it's not that you're going to be telling us exactly what it is you're going to do. Anyone have an idea as to what the argument's going to be for their essay? Okay, and we'll have to kind of tidy it up a little bit, but that's the basic idea. What's really probably the first thing we have to decide? Who you want to go with? Anyone you're thinking about? Again, not holding you to it. Sam? Okay. Or? Okay, yeah. It doesn't matter. Who you want to pick? Okay, so we're going to go with Cal. So for your argument, and you can certainly have the prompt in front of you, while you're taking a look at constructing the argument. So the words that we have, and we can certainly tweak it, used by Steinbeck to illustrate how personal suffering may help to positively shape a character. So, said Cal. So Cal's personal suffering positively shapes him as a character. Since I'm introducing him for the first time, I would go full name. I'd go Caleb Trask. Afterwards, you could go to Cal. And I'd do the same thing. Like you mentioned Aaron, I'd spell it out the first, the full way, and then you could switch to, single A, Ron. You could do, if you refer to Adam, go Adam Trask, then it could become Adam and all that kind of stuff. So argument would be Caleb Trask's personal suffering positively. I'm just going to write impacts him. For now, we might change it a little bit. It's nice to kind of avoid using the exact same words from the prompt the whole way through. But Caleb Trask's personal suffering positively impacts him. I'll go as a character. I'll keep that in there. What did I not put as my last word? Instead of character. And you could use it, but I did not use person. So if Abby does decide to write about Kathy, I think there's a difference between saying someone's a positive person and someone's a positive character. So if you're doing, the strong, independent female who accumulates power, you still might not think that makes her a good person, but it makes her a good character. So that's a way that you could kind of tweak things a little bit. Caleb, you could go either way. Samuel, I think a lot of people would say person. And it's not that I'm going to go, you should have used person instead of character, depending upon who it is. But it gives you some freedom. It gives you a little bit of leeway as to what it is that you want to do. The first thing, when it comes to doing a thesis statement, a SPA, a lot of times people think I should go 1, 2, 3. Figure out my strategies, figure out my purpose, figure out my argument. I would reverse it. The strategy is going to be the last thing. The first thing you're going to come up with is your argument. For today, we'll switch it. Actually, a little bit. We'll make this number 2. Strategies. What are strategies? What do I mean by strategies? Diddles. So, not that this now becomes Sarah's little thesis statement. What are, in your mind, do you think could be potential rhetorical devices that would help illustrate how Cal's personal suffering, underdog status, makes him good character, strong character? Anything comes to mind. And you could think of it as what are devices that kind of illustrate that he does suffer, or that he is set up, in some ways for an underdog status.
When he's spotted, does he accept the money?
Okay?
Which is sort of an allusion to when Cain's father, God, didn't accept his what's weed, or was it
Not Cain's father as God, but Cain's father is Adam. His father is Adam. So that's certainly highlighting that illusion that would be taking place. So there are a lot of illusions. There are a lot of biblical illusions. I don't think I said it to you. I think it was a different class, but just to make sure we're clear, you do not have to write about biblical illusions. Okay? There are a ton of them throughout the course of the book. There's no denying that. Some people are going to be more comfortable writing about it than others. I'm not going to make you write about it. There are certainly things that you can do beyond biblical illusions, but almost for every single character, you probably could pull, that one in. So potential thing could be biblical illusions. I could just use illusions. I'm going with biblical since we were talking specifically, about Cain, Abel, Adam, all that kind of stuff. One thing that I like that Ethan did, he didn't tell me the device first. What did he do first? Came up with the example. So if you go, I'm really good at finding metaphors. I will find metaphors. I'm really good at finding similes. You're putting the cart before the horse because you're looking for devices that you don't know that necessarily match up with the argument. But Ethan gave us a specific example from the text and then found the device that would go along with it. So you want to figure out the argument, you want to figure out your examples, potential examples, and then you can find devices that correlate with it, as he just did. What else?
He's always described as the dark twin. Like he's never described as like a light twin. He's always considered like the dark twin, the secretive one. So like that kind of either motif.
Yeah, and you do have some, depending upon where this stuff kind of pops up, could be different things. When you said dark, I was thinking you were going to say something besides motif. First thing that came to mind for me was imagery, and then we had flashbacks to the pearl, and then you got sad. You could go imagery. You could, if it's something, and it does with Cal, that it keeps coming up, you could go with motif as well. So you do have potential for different things. Sometimes, if there's another example of imagery that you want to use, then I could switch my other example of imagery to motif, and now I'm good to go. So it really makes no difference. I'll just put imagery, but it could be whatever. But you'd be finding examples of, that darkness that would be taking place. Now, Virginia, before we get to you, you said darkness, so how he kind of seems to be troubled character. Biblical allusions, troubled, okay? What do I need to make sure that I do have some examples include positivity? Does your idea have positivity? Okay. So what was your idea anyway, though?
It was how he uses details to show like how Adam loses all his money, and then the twins are like everyone teases the twins about it.
And even with the and you could be getting into the details, the amount of money and things like that. The fact that they were considering naming for a short time, hey, there's two twins. There are not two twins, but there's two children in the Bible. We could name them Cain and Abel. No, that's a bad idea. Okay. So that could even be something, that you put in the illusion paragraph at first, when he's born. They thought about naming him Cain. That's not good, says Mr. Cain. What's a positive thing about him?
Steinbeck describes a lot how Cal felt like a deep love for his brother. He felt a sense to protect him. He felt like he was praying at one point to not make himself mean. I think those are good things. He's using his darkness, he's recognizing it, and he's trying to protect someone.
He's very self-reflective.
Yeah,
about it. I guess you don't ultimately know, but pretty good sense. At what point do you feel like, okay, things might actually be okay for him?
At the very end of the book.
Okay.
When after Eric goes off to war, he almost fully repents of what he's done. And then he and Abra I don't even know.
They hit it off.
And the family curse, in a way, kind of starts to come to an end because what does Adam do? He dies, but before he dies, he blesses him. Cyrus never did it. You have this whole lineage of this is a troubled clan, and then at the very end, Adam decides to bless him. How does he bless him? What did I not use instead of imagery? Now, what was our other? I didn't use motif. Why not? Because I'm better off using it here, because does Tim shall come up multiple times? Absolutely. I'm better off using it here because I know I can get my positive aspect to it. Or if I use, not that I couldn't come up with something, but if I went with motif for the darkness, that would kind of hurt Tim shell a little bit if I wanted to go about using that. So, you know those Venn diagrams where it's circles that overlap? Rhetorical devices tend to do that a lot because they do overlap depending upon how you're going about using them. A lot of the motifs that were in A Tale of Two Cities were colors, imagery and things like that. So there's a lot of back and forth that can happen with those things. There certainly could be other things that you could use for positive traits and whatnot, but that would be a good example, I think, that would certainly work. So we have biblical allusions, imagery, and motif. I don't have to limit all of my answers to things that just happened with Cal. I might build the strength of how Steinbeck is utilizing these biblical allusions throughout the course of the book and culminate it with Cal. The motif of Tim Shell, certainly about halfway through the book is when you have that whole discussion that kind of starting to take place with Lee and the meaning of it. I can write about Lee. With the darkness that's getting mentioned, with the imagery, I could mention how Lee kind of tries to, build him up a little bit and say, hey, you're not really all that terrible of a person. So just because I'm writing about Cal doesn't mean that every single thing is going to be Cal so far as my examples. When you have 9 examples to use, it gives you, again, flexibility, which is the name of the game when you do different stuff. Biblical allusions, imagery, and motif. Caleb Trask's personal suffering positively impacts him as a character. For this to be a sentence, what do I need? I need a verb. What would be a good verb? It would be options of verbs. And I'll even put the word that in front of Caleb.
Maybe highlights.
Okay. So, highlights. Not that I dislike it, I just want to come up with options, so that we're not limited to one. But it would, biblical allusions, imagery, and motif highlights that Caleb Trask's personal suffering positively impacts him as a character. What else?
Like not using that, use presents.
What's the third part of my spa? Down here? It's an argument. What do you do with arguments? Because you're writing an argument. You prove it. How do you prove stuff? I give evidence. My evidence, I argue for it. My evidence also, think of it like an S word, supports. I can put though, argues though. Argues, supports, reveals. But the options keep coming. It's not shows, it's not demonstrates. Illustrates, I think is the verb that I used in the prompt for it. You could certainly go with that. That would go along with the highlights, kind of idea. So it makes no difference which one you choose. You want it to be the one that's going to be best for the idea that you're going to go with. So biblical allusions, imagery, and motifs prove that Caleb Trask's personal suffering positively impacts him as a character. That's your thesis statement. Strategies plus purpose plus argument. The key really when it comes to that purpose, you want to make sure you got a verb in there, a strong verb that's going to highlight what you're going to do. Now you know, I don't want to say in every single paragraph because it might not be, but now you know you want to make sure that every paragraph at least contributes to that argument. I'm saying Sarah, not meaning that you have to write this essay, but if Sarah's body paragraphs aren't revealing something about the personal suffering, how that's going to positively impact him, that paragraph's not doing what it should. The most common mistake or hurdle that you will probably deal with because it's your first rhetorical analysis essay is you will do a wonderful job of finding rhetorical devices. And then you're going to be like, well, how do I explain how that examples to the argument. And that's the part that I won't say you're going to struggle with, but that's the one that you're probably going to have to put the most emphasis on. And that's why, when Ethan was going with the specific example, you want to think of the example before you come up with the device. So you could have some questions during your rough draft when we start peer editing and whatnot. These are the examples that I wanted to use, but I'm not exactly sure what that device would be that would work. And that's something then that we'll try to tackle. Okay. Any initial thoughts at this point? Right now it makes sense. Then when you go home,
When you're using, like when you pick your character, so you have to have examples from throughout the book. The character's name was part of the book.
So,
Smaller part of the book.
like, I mean, and Cal's a good example. You're kind of limited a little bit to half of it. So it's certainly understood that I bet most of these examples would probably be from page 300 and on, because that's just where he is. I do think that you could still kind of highlight how, the fact that Adam is his father kind of makes him an underdog. Well, or is Adam his father? That would be a detail that I could go back to, and so I might be having something coming from page like 125 with, Charles and Kathy. So I could be taking a look at, so his father's not necessarily the greatest person in the world. Granddaddy's not a whole lot better. Those are details that I could kind of use to build it up. In theory, this goes in chronological order. Rhetorical devices don't always lend themselves to going in chronological order. So, I do think it would make sense to end, if we were going with this, with Tim Shell as that last paragraph, because, it's kind of like the finality aspect. But if Ethan starts off with biblical allusions, he could be taking something from page 100. You then could be hitting stuff later on page 400. And then in the second body paragraph, we come back to the 300s. But it's all culminating, it's building up towards that final point that you want to drive home. So, yeah, depending upon the character, Kathy would be easier. Adam would be easier to do the whole way throughout the book. Samuel, the other option, he kind of stops around page 300. But how does he continue to positively, you could take, how does he still impact people in a positive manner? Lee still talks about him. Adam still talks about him. So that lets you know that, okay, it did shape him as a character because he was still impacting other people.
If you use biblical allegory and biblical allusions, would that be too similar?
Well, no, because they're different.
Yeah.
Yes, because sometimes people confuse them. So allusion is going to be a reference. Allegory is going to be where the characters in the story has symbolic, abstract meaning to it. This certainly works for both. You would want to make sure that you're not double dipping, so that your biblical allusion is, this alludes to Cain and Abel. My allegory is all about Cain and Abel. So now I've just kind of said the same thing, over and over again. You could definitely do both of them. You would just want to make sure you're not doing the same examples. Person asked yesterday, can I quote from the Bible? Yes. How do I quote from the Bible? The Bible doesn't go on a works cited page. It's one of those special books that you don't have to. But if you were to do a biblical allusion or allegory, I do think citing things from the Bible would be wise. You just go book, chapter, verse. It would not count as any of your 9 examples, citations coming from the book. It would be there to help explain those examples, but you wouldn't go, I don't have to use 7 because I took 2, from the Bible. But I think that would be a good thing to do. Now again, if I'm not writing about biblical allusions and allegory, probably not going to feel the need to quote from the Bible, because you don't have to. But yeah, it's certainly something that you could do. And honestly, a lot of the stuff that we look at has biblical allusions because they tend to be very universal stories, regardless of anyone's religions or spirituality and things like that. So it's something that we always do, not always, but we often talk about, but it doesn't mean that, okay, Libby, now's your Bible essay, you've been waiting, you have to do it. That's never going to be, shut down. I was hoping we'd have a little bit of time to start finding diction, imagery, details, figurative language, syntax from chapters 8 and 9, but that's what we're going to start with tomorrow. honestly, for like the next 3 weeks, we're doing diction, imagery, details, figurative language, syntax, strategy, purpose, argument, over and over and over again. You will get sick of it, but it's something that we're going to constantly be using throughout the course of the year. It's like that first big building block. So if you're still shaky on them, we're going to talk about them. First question for tomorrow is going to be, all right, what are some examples that you can think of from chapters 8 and 9 for diction, imagery, details, figurative language, syntax, and then we can broaden that out to things that happen throughout the course of the book, so you start thinking of ideas. You have your character analysis packets back. I start looking through them. Which characters speak best for you? A lot of you have a lot of page numbers written by characters. Take a look at those page numbers. Look to see which examples would work. Some of you don't have page numbers, so you have time to go start looking for those page numbers. But what are the examples that would help prove how personal suffering positively impacts, shapes your person, character, however you want to go about wording it. So homework assignment, literally at this point, it's like fill out the survey if you haven't done it, remind if you haven't done it. Start thinking about problems, at this point. You too.
I said 17.